Hello everyone, Elise from the Pen and Brushing Co. First video for 2023. I know it's been a moment, but I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas and New Year and just a holiday and a break. I know I certainly did. Today we are working on this piece and I've decided to film this and do this as a video because it's very different to what I normally do in the fact that this is a chipboard, MDF, screw together piece of furniture, so like a flat pack piece of furniture. Normally I work on older pieces, I work on solid timber pieces, so this is very, very different to what I normally do, but I thought it was a good opportunity to show what you can achieve with a piece like this. At the end of the day, it's just like any other piece of furniture. Our prep's going to be the same, our painting's going to be the same, except I've also tightened all the bolts on it. Normally I don't do that. So I just thought it was a good opportunity. It's a really nice pick. I've actually got two of these. I'm going to do one, see how it goes, and then I'll decide whether or not I want to do the other one. But let's get into it. So this piece to begin with, we have cleaned it really well, hot soapy water. I have used Pureco's lemon myrtle cleaner on this piece, and then we have scruff sanded really, really well. Now we did use the electric sander. I was hoping originally that we would be able to have a timber top. Yes, it is a veneer over an MDF. Unfortunately, my husband did the sanding and went straight through the veneer. It was ultra, ultra thin, straight through it in about 2 seconds. So I'm going to bring you a little bit closer and we're going to show you that quickly just to show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is the top. You can see we've sanded it quite well. Obviously, because we're not going for a timber finish, we don't need to get all this finish off. We've just gone for a scruff sand all over. You can see down here on the shelf, it's quite scruff sanded. The legs are the only part of this piece that are actually timber. The rest is not timber. These pieces are timber. The top, it's a veneer on an MDF. The drawer, these pieces are timber. This is a veneer on MDF as well as this, the shelf. So, very little real timber here. It is designed to be a really cheap piece of furniture. But this is so this is the MDF coming through here. You can really see it just there. And this is some of it as well. And this is the veneer. So you can see that is very, very thin and it's just gone immediately through. There's also a thin bit of veneer around the edges. It's just sort of a band that I glue on to hide those edges, but you can even see, where are we? Along here, you can see where it's just started to go through there as well. So it really gives you an idea of how thin this the veneer is. It's very, very thin. It went through straight away. And if you're not careful, you will do. So whenever you've got a cheap modern piece like this, always check. The telltale sign is around the back of this piece, so I'll bring you around. Okay, so coming around the back, we've got the warning stickers. Obviously the normal tip over sticker, you get this on all flat pack furniture. Because the way this furniture is made, oftentimes it is more at risk of tipping over than a nice solid piece. So of course solid pieces can tip over, but you'll always find this on pieces like this. The key sign here is it says formaldehyde, which is one of the main components in the MDF, which is underneath the veneer. So that's a little telltale sign as well. But as you can see, even around the back here, they've got a timber or the veneer band around there as well. So it is very, very hard to tell. And unless you know what to look for, you're not going to know it's there. But obviously you can see we've gone straight through it. We've discovered very quickly. So we're going to use base and block it. That's just going to seal this and make sure that when we paint over it, our paint doesn't soak into this, creating an uneven finish. All right, let's get painting. Finish on this. The reason we're using Pureco silk finish is I'm not looking for an artistic, creative finish on this. I want to keep it clean. I want to keep it simple. I want to keep it really modern. I want to lighten and freshen it up. So we're using silk finish. All in one, built-in top coat, nice and easy and perfect for a quick flip. Like if you're using Pureco base and block it in the colour grey, comes in a white and a grey. You can use whichever you like. I'm using the grey because it's what I've got open at the moment. I am going to be painting it with a lighter colour. I'm thinking fossil, maybe macadamia, maybe gumnut. Haven't decided, we'll make a decision. Roller tray, I'm using a 2 Fussy Blokes rollers. It's stained green, but it is clean, and we're using the roller frame as well, and this is the 5mm nap. And then we're using one of our 38mm paintbrushes. These are our oval ones, very slight curve, and we're using that today to just get into these awkward bits in here, and anywhere that sort of needs a bit of a cutting before we roll it. We're rolling because there's lots of flat surfaces, and it's going to make our painting much easier. Okay, so once you've got your paint open, just want to pop some in your tray. Don't tip out too much. You can always pour out more if you need it. We're going to do about that much. Now it is warm today. We do have the air conditioner on, so I'm not too worried about it drying too fast. We're going to come in with our roller in a second. We'll start with our brush first. Dip it in just as you normally would. Get that paint into the bristles. And I'm just going to come around and do a quick little cutting on the legs. And this is just going to make the actual rolling process much easier. I draw out just a little bit. And I'm actually going to hand paint this drawing. And then we're going to remove it and take it out just to make it that little bit easier. And the reason we're hand painting it is because the roller just can't fit in there, and it's not worth spending ages trying to get the roller into these little nooks and crannies. You can see my paint job is not perfect. It doesn't have to be. You're not looking for perfection with this. You're not looking for perfect coverage, not looking for perfect anything. You are literally just wanting to get that paint onto the piece as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So I'm just going to take that drawer out. Whoops. The drawers are really heavy in this. They're quite solid, as they always are on pieces like this. Grab our roller. I'm going to load up our roller as normal. Just roll it around in the paint a few times. You don't want too much, otherwise you're going to have paint flicking everywhere as you roll. Okay? And by rolling it back and forth a few times, it just helps get that paint nice and even on your roller. And then you can start the fun part. And just do a nice, simple roll. I do like to do these bits here. I just think it looks a little bit nicer. I'm not looking to lay down a lot of paint. I'm just wanting to get just enough there so I can have it looking nice. Obviously the legs and that rolling, if you can roll them, it is easier. These are nice and squared off, which makes my job extra easy. Don't forget those inside bits as well. I always forget one of them. Okay, so we're back again, following day. You just need to wait until your primer's fully dry. In this sort of heat that we're having at the moment, it's dry in about half an hour to an hour. You don't have to wait overnight or anything like that before you can recoat. Recoat as soon as it's dry. So now we're fully dry. I did notice afterwards I did miss a leg. Doesn't matter, it has been really well scratch sanded, so I'm not worried about that. But it's ready for its paint colour. So I've actually chosen to go with Pureco Silk Finish in the colour Sugarcane, which is this really beautiful, very subtle green. So we're going to be rolling that on and brushing it on all of the base. And then for the top, we're going to be using Pureco silk finish, again in the colour Fawn. I want a bit of a contrast, and then the top, I'm going to have a bit of a play, see if I can sort of do a faux timber effect. I've never sort of done something like that before, so I thought, why not, let's have a go. It's a good piece to try, and I want a little bit of contrast. I don't just want one big solid colour, so that's the plan. So we're going to start with the gum nut first, and I'm going to do the top once all the base is done, so 2 coats. Once all the base is done, we will do the top, just so I can lift it down and I can sort of see what I'm doing. So that's the plan. Okay, so I just want to quickly point out how important it is to do a really good shake and stir. So this is a different colour, this is Mermaid, and you can see how the pigment of the paint really does soak to the bottom. So it's really important that we stir and shake that up and get that all incorporated, so we get a nice even colour all the way through, and you get that nice even colour on top. If you try and paint without shaking and stirring that, you're not going to get any coverage at all. That's just some of the ingredients in the paint that's separated because the pigment's heavier. This has got no coverage, this top little section here, so it's really important that we shake that up really well and make sure, and stir it really well, make sure we get rid of that. So I'm going to be rolling and brushing this again today with the same brush and roller that we used yesterday. Oops. Ooh. For the undercoat. I'm going to pour some out just like that. And okay, so same as yesterday, I'm going to cut in first, and I'm going to get all those tricky bits. So I'm just going to get my paint worked into my bristles so that I can get a nice even finish. Now silk finish is an all-in-one paint with a built-in top coat, so and this does self-level as well, so I'm not worried about brush strokes as such. Okay, so now that I've finished cutting in, I'm going to paint the drawer. I'm going to do the same as yesterday, and I'm going to paint the drawer by hand, simply because it's hard to get the roller into little sections like this. So I'm going to focus on those corners and the edges and really make sure that I get all of those. And this is the first coat of paint of your colour, so it doesn't matter if the coverage isn't perfect. For the rest, we're going to roll, so you can see we've still got quite a bit of paint left in there. We may need some more, but we'll see how we go. Loading up our roller, same as yesterday. Making sure that paint is nice and even. Okay, so we're up to our final coat, or what I think will be our final coat. We've got really good coverage. So final coat on this piece. Now it's looking really good. One thing I do like to do between coats, particularly when I'm rolling, brushing, I don't have as many issues. I often find the paint's a lot smoother, particularly with silk finish. But what I do like to do with silk finish when I'm rolling it is give it a really light sand between coats. So I'm just going to do that all over. I'm just using, one of Pureco's sponge sanding pads in the 320 grit, I think it is. It's the finest one. So really light sand. And all we're doing, just like for a second. And this is just to smooth that paint out just a little bit. Now the drawer, obviously I have brush, and then I have rolled everything out. So all this is doing is just smoothing out that paint. Silk finish does self-level, so you're not going to have a lot of texture, but I find this just helps smooth down a little bit as well. I like to do it between coats. You can do it after the primer as well if you like. Now, this time I'm only going to be rolling the shuck. I'm going to paint with the brush for everything else. So I've got my paint, same colour again. We're all brushed. The reason I wanted to brush this last coat is simply just to see for my own inquisitive mind whether or not brushing versus rolling the legs and that was quicker. I've had a look at the time and it's about exactly the same. So not a massive amount of time saved either way. One thing with brushing is it does lay the paint down a little bit thicker, so I won't need a third coat on the legs. Rolling, I may have needed a third coat, probably not, but I may have, simply because rolling lays the paint down a little bit thinner. So I am going to roll the shelf just because it will keep it nice and neat and clean, and it's a larger area. It's just quicker to roll the shelf as well. So same as usual, I've got a little bit of paint left in my tray, which should be just enough. We're going to load up my roller. And we're going to roll it exactly the same as what we did previously. And now we let this dry. So I will come back and I will check over the whole piece, make sure we've got coverage everywhere. But I'm expecting that to be our last coat, so we shouldn't need to do any more. So as soon as that's dry, I'll check it. If we're all good, we'll bring it down and we'll work on the top together. Okay, so our base is completely dry. 2 coats is all it took. And now we are going to come in and do our top. Now I have quickly just, I'm not sure if you can see that, just popped a little bit of tape around those 2 edges just to make sure I don't accidentally get any paint from the top on my fresh, new, clean paint job. I always do that. I always prefer to do the top, whether I am staining a timber, oiling a timber, or doing a different color. I always prefer to do it last. That way it doesn't matter if I get paint from the sides on the top, and it's easier to protect the sides, less tape, etc., than trying to protect the whole top. So we're going to be using Pureco Silk Finish in the color Fawn, which is this beautiful brown. I'm going to attempt, now I've never done this before, but we're going to attempt like a faux timber look. Not sure how it's turned out. I've got an idea in my head about how it's going to work, but we're just going to have a play around with it and see what we can come up with. Now, I'm looking for a bit of texture, so I'm using one of my older brushes. It's a little bit rough. It's not as good as the other brush that I was using earlier, so we're going to use this. Now, Silk Finish, it is going to self-level. So I'm not going to end up with a lot of brush strokes, but I want a little bit, I just want a little bit of texture. Now, I'm using Silk Finish instead of chalk finish for this, even though I do want texture, because I need fawn for a customer's piece later this week. And I need the silk finish for that. So rather than opening 2 different tubs of paint, it's not a color that I'm going to be using a lot of. I'm going to just do the one, and I'm going to use very, very little paint, maybe a tablespoon of paint or so on the top of this. So I'm not looking to do open a second pot of chalk finish when I need a silk finish, when I'm only going to be using a little bit. So we're just going to load up our paintbrush like normal, straight out of the jar is fine. I have given this a really good stir. As I said earlier, always make sure that you stir really, really well. And then I'm just going to brush it on. I'm not looking for perfect. And I don't mind if the paint's a little bit thick. And this is also why I protected the edges, because I'm just looking to build a little bit of texture. Now obviously chalk finish will give me more texture than this, but this is what we're using. So making sure that I get my edges as well. You don't want to forget your edges. And this is also why I taped, so that I don't have to worry about getting paint on that nice fresh paint job that I've just finished. Now you can see the coverage, being a darker colour, is significantly better than the lighter colour with sugarcane. I'd still expect to do 2 coats, but because I'm going to be doing something different over the top, we're going to just do 1. Now it is warm, and I have turned off the aircon just for a minute, just because it blows directly where I'm standing, so that this paint dries that little bit faster. And I am going to slightly overwork this as well. As I said, I'm looking for texture. So overworking your paint is a great way to get texture if you're specifically looking for texture. One of the most common questions I get is, I've got texture, how do I fix it? And the first thing I always say is, don't go back over paint that you've already put down, because that's when you're building texture, because that paint has already started to dry. But because we're looking for the texture today, we're going to keep touching it. Now I'm just trying to make sure all of that undercoat's covered as best as it can. Obviously first coat, never going to get all the coverage, but I'm just trying to make sure that I can get it the best possible way. I really, really like this colour actually, I must say. I've always liked it, but I do really like it. And I think on the right piece, as the main colour, it would be absolutely stunning. And I think it's perfect for what we're trying to do here with a faux timber finish. So I'm just getting this back edge too, just to make sure we've got all our bits. Again, just wiping back over that paint. The paint on top is starting to dry. It's still going to self-level. It's still going to try and do its thing. The self-level in this is amazing. So most of this texture will be gone. But I can already see it's starting to really dry. So we'll get that little bit, and I can feel it's grabbing the brush as well. Whereas down this end where I've just put it, my brush is really smooth. But this end where it's really started to dry, I can feel that paint grabbing. Now I'm just trying to make sure as well that I don't do it so much that as that paint dries, that I'm peeling the paint back up and off the surface, because we obviously don't want to be doing that. Okay, there's first coat. We might do a second coat, but I don't think so. I think we're going to wait for this to dry, and then we're going to go in with our stain and glaze and see if we can achieve what I've got in my head. So we're going to leave this to dry for about half an hour. As I said, it's nice and warm, so it's going to dry super fast. Okay, so our top is nice and dry with our fawn. I will say I absolutely love the combination of the fawn with the sugarcane. It's really, really nice. They are different, but not so different that they're clashing. It's just a really, really nice finish. Well, nice color combination. So we're going to attempt what I've got in my head. If it doesn't work, I'm going to paint back over it with the fawn and leave the top fawn, because I do really, really like this. But let's have a go at what I've got in my head first, because I do want to have a go. Now we're going to be using Pureco silk finish. We're going to use sepia. I was originally going to use sable, but I can't find my jar right now. So we're going to try sepia. If sepia is just not quite doing it for me, then I will go and find my jar of sable. But I'm thinking sepia might be a better match anyway. For reference, sepia is a light brown, sable is a dark chocolate. So we're going to try sepia first. We've got a little bit of texture. There isn't a lot, but I think it's enough for what we're after anyway. I'm going to be using one of Pureco's palm brushes. I'm using the largest one, which is 100ml. If you don't have a brush like this, any large brush will do. I think a natural bristle would give you a better finish for what we're about to attempt. than a synthetic. Just because they're a little bit coarser, they've got a little bit more texture to them, and I also want a really nice wide brush. Another option would be like a dustpan brush, like the broom and dustpan combination. One of those I think would work really well for this as well. But we're going to try this, see how it goes. If it's not enough, then I will go and find my dustpan brush. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to tip out a little tiny bit of the sepia, and I'm going to do it in a bit of a line like that. I don't want to load my brush up. I'm almost, I think, going to dry brush it. Now my brush is brand new, it's dry. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a flick, just to make sure. Sometimes there's a few loose bristles and I don't want those stuck in my finish. So a little bit of a flick, and then just the very tips of the ends. And I'm just sort of like that. All right, I'm going to brush long directions, and I'm going to keep it all in the same direction. And I'm going to use a really, really loose wrist. And I'm going to sort of let it go a little bit wherever it wants to as well. I have no idea if this is going to work. This is what I've got pictured in my head. You can get actual wood graining tools as well, which I think would work quite well. Well, we're going to try this to begin with. I don't have a wood graining tool. I could certainly get one, but it won't arrive before I want this piece done. And we're just going to keep sort of going back and forth. I'm liking what I'm getting. As I said, this is a faux timber. It's never going to look like the real thing. And we might even use a couple of colours of stain as well to sort of get that variation that we're after. And although just more one edge, and do a light little brush across the front as well. The ends, I'm just going to sort of stipple them. Obviously the ends of timber, they're not going to have big lines through them always. And I don't want it looking too much like it's just been painted on. The ends look really good actually. I will take some close-up photos and add them to the video for you. And again, not looking for a lot. I actually quite like this. I like how subtle it is. It's working out about what I was expecting, so I'm quite happy with that actually. I think you definitely want pretty decent coverage underneath for that first coat of your paint color as well. You don't want to be coming in and doing this if you don't have that decent coverage first. I'm just really, really lightly, like this is barely touching it. Now, one thing I will note is I feel like the very ends are getting a little bit heavy, so I'm just going to go back this other way and sort of just brush them off like so. It's definitely catching some of that texture underneath. Not that we have a lot, but it is definitely catching some of it. Alright, so with the sable, we're just going to do the same thing again. Now I've just popped, you can sort of see. So this is the sable just here, and this is the sepia. So it's that dark chocolate brown. I'm just going to try and get that to space itself out into a bit of a line. And again, I'm very lightly going to dip it in. So I've sort of just dipped my brush in. I'm just going to pat it off a little bit. I'm using the same brush, I haven't cleaned it. And I'm just very lightly going to brush over that again. And I'm really, really lightly doing that. All right, well, there is our faux timber finish. I'm actually really happy with it. It's never gonna look 100%. I like how much fawn's coming through. I didn't want it like super, super heavy, but that is really, really nice. So I'm gonna bring the camera in closer. We'll do a little bit of a close-up for you, but I'm really, really happy with that. And the best thing is the Stain and Glaze has a built-in top coat, as does the Fossil, because we've used silk finish. So once this is all dry, it just needs to cure 7 to 10 days, and this is good to go. I do not need to put another coat of sealer over this. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope that you have learnt something, that you have a go with the paints or the products or the techniques. This is such a fun flip. As I said, I haven't done a flat pack piece like this before, but it looks amazing, and it was well worth the effort, I think. So thank you all for watching. I hope to see you all in the next video.